Thanks for joining us for today's podcast. This is our first edition of the new ACRO podcasting platform. We hope you enjoy this new medium and way for us to deliver timely content for you, hopefully in a fun and engaging environment. Today's program, we're actually going to be talking about Medicare reimbursement for 2022 and the cuts that are looming. I'm excited to introduce the host of today's program, Dr. Brian Lally, who is the Vice Chair of ACRO's Finance and Operations Committee and also a member of the ACRO Board of Chancellors. So Dr. Lally, thanks very much for leading us on today's program.
Thanks for the introduction, Fraser. Hopefully everyone is having a good day today. Today's program will focus on the Medicare proposed cuts for physician reimbursement for 2022 and what specifically could be impacting radiation oncology. In particular, we're also going to tell you what ACRO is doing to advocate on behalf of our members to prevent these cuts from being implemented. I have two guests with me here today. First, my long-term friend and former mentor, Dr. Dwight Heron, who is both the Vice President for ACRO as well as the Chair of our Government Relations and Economic Committee. Also with us is Jason McKitrick from Lively Partners. They spearhead our advocacy and lobbying efforts in Washington, D.C. I want to thank both of them for being with us here today.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Brian. And I'd want to say to our members, welcome. It's wonderful to have a new venue and opportunity to talk to you about what's going on in the Medicare fee schedule and the proposed cuts. As you know, the Government Relations and Economics Committee is a very active committee within ACRO and has really focused on a number of issues that are so vital to what we do as a community in radiation oncology. And it seems as if it's an annual event that we go through to specifically address CMS's proposal for the fee schedule, the physician fee schedule each year. This year, we do have some significant cuts in radiation oncology that can amount up to 20% reduction in some of the services that we provide. And we believe that clear transparency, and I think there are some opportunities here to really address some of the errors, perhaps in the methodology, obviously confounded by the pandemic, but also historical inputs that have sort of resulted in significant reductions that we think CMS should pay attention to and make some modifications. Jason, you've got a sort of a long-term longitudinal view of some of the challenges that we seem to go through on a perennial basis in terms of the fee schedule. And without talking about the APM that's sort of looming in a part of this, if we can focus on the PFS and historically how we got here and what are some of the major issues.
Yeah. Well, if there's any sort of historically any kind of good news here, it's that radiation oncology hasn't been sort of targeted, I think, as the only sector that's been hurt under the physician fee schedule over the last decade or so. It's really a lot of the proceduralists that are in the PFS. So radiation oncology has gone back to about 2007. Cumulatively, if you look at all the impact table, and this isn't me, this is CMS's own data. If you look at the impact tables, radiation oncology has cumulatively had a cut of about 29%, going back to 2007. And so, but we're not the only ones. You've got, diagnostic radiology, 39%, vascular surgery, 30%, cardiology, 21%. So a lot of, again, the proceduralists within the PFS have been really negatively impacted. And it's got to do, I think, with several factors that we can explore in more detail, but at a high level, those factors include kind of the vagaries of budget neutrality. There were big cuts last year in the PFS. to a number of proceduralists, not unlike this year. Last year was related to the evaluation and management services that precipitated a concurrent 10% cut to the conversion factor. This year, there's a policy related to updating clinical labor data in the PFS, which causes a 24% cut to what's called the direct adjustment factor. So there are all these factors in the PFS that, and there's this complicated 19-step methodology within the practice expense methodology that are sort of, I think, really causing the PFS to get more and more out of whack with what it actually costs to provide care under the physician fee schedule. So at a high level, that's kind of what's going on. There's some other intricacies that we can dive into, but historically, that's Dr. Heron. That's kind of what we've been suffering under over the last many years.
So it's interesting, Jason, because as you said, last year their update created a bit of a challenge, and what's happening this year with the inputs, and you're correct. It's, most of us docs aren't focused on the clear regulatory, the nuances that go into creation of the PFS for Medicare patients, and certainly for CMS. But these labor inputs, if I recall, they've not really been updated since the early 2000s, right? It's right. Probably, was it 2000, 2002? And if you just think about the labor cost that has changed, and if you think of the individuals now that we even have in our radiation oncology practice and what they do, and frankly their costs, you can see how that was out of whack. But because of budget neutrality on the radiation oncology side, and as you said, this affects a lot of procedural specialties, the vagrancies of it all results in this negative impact. So it's a good thing that they're updating it. The problem is, because we were kind of in a box, it creates a cut on the other side, right?
That's right. And like last year too, when you looked at the evaluation and management services, I think there was a reasonable case to be made that data needed to be updated as well. And if that's all that CMS had done, it would have made sense. It's the problem is that you've got these second order effects that happen, and they happen, not only that they happen, but they are not being sufficiently analyzed. So the E&M policy that took place over the course of 2 years, with CMS making the initial proposal, then pulling back, AMA stepping in and say, we'll take a look at this. They did some surveys, got some data back to CMS. CMS, finalized the following year. Lots of, hundreds of pages of preamble in the rule, proposed and final rules. A lot of resources went into it, et cetera. But when it came to the other side of the coin, the 10% cuts at the conversion factor, there was almost no analysis on what happens to everybody else that got impacted. I think last year, radiology got hit the worst, but we did too. Radiation oncology did too. I think radiology got hit 10%. I think we got hit by 5 or something like that. But there was no analysis, and so again, same thing this year. To your point, the clinical labor data, was arguably outmoded. And if there had been no second order effect, everybody's clinical labor data, their reimbursement under the fee schedule, everybody's would have gone up because everybody's was old. It wasn't like, ours went down and so we got a cut. That's not what happened. Everybody's went up, but you had this weird thing on the back end with the direct adjustment factor that caused a 24% cut to that factor, and really significant cuts to these proceduralists again, which have not been analyzed. And so, a lot of the, I think, discussion that you are seeing on the Hill right now and I've had committee staff telling me this, that a lot of it relates to why does, and this isn't to blame any staff over there, it's a kind of a system problem. Why doesn't the system analyze these second order effects as much as it spends time on looking at the first order issues?
So Dwight and Jason, I just want to thank you, but I just also want to say I'm one of those classic ACRO physicians who spends most of my day taking care of patients. And I just feel that the majority of my day is spent doing non-clinical care. What can I be doing in my current position that would help you two? I want to provide patient care. I don't want to be spending my time arguing with insurance companies doing other types of non-clinical duties. Can you provide me a timeline of when these cuts will be impacting my clinic and what will be going on then?
The point, though, right, is exactly what we're dealing with now. What we're talking about is the 2022 PFS. So what we're talking about is what, if as it stands, would affect how you get reimbursed next year, starting January 1st, 2022. Now, you're absolutely right. All of us who are clinicians, we're busy taking care of patients every day. We're also fortunate as a college to have a number of physicians who are, in fact, also focused, have dedicated themselves and their time and taken time out of their own practices to help us navigate some of these orders and to advocate. And Jason has been, an enormous asset that's up on the hill, that's talking to the staffers, it's talking to the administration about the impact of some of the things that you're feeling. And to be honest, if you think about it, Brian, if some of these things, if there weren't individuals like the members on the GREC and advocacy that we do through Jason, we'll talk a little bit about our ACRO PAC, because this is so important. Just imagine the other things that you would have to deal with, the volume of them that you'd have to deal with, whether it's talking to the insurance companies or dealing with the fact that you can deliver care to your patients, may be even more complicated. In fact, we think that there are some practices that would be significantly negatively impacted. So they may even go out of business if some of these cuts go into effect. We saw that, and we made the argument through our comment letter last year. We're seeing some of these effects. Some practices are literally practicing on the edge. I mean, it doesn't take a 5% cut is a significant cut to your ability to deliver a state-of-the-art comprehensive cancer care to your patients. And so in some ways, it's really helpful to have members like you, Brian, engaged with the college, engaged with our advocacy efforts to help reduce the burden that you see and feel in your clinic, because all of us feel it.
I agree with you 100%. A 5 to 10% cut in my clinic may limit my ability to have my nutritionist or my social worker or some of my nursing staff available for my patients as they currently are. Jason, what does the roadmap look like from here? And any thoughts on the prospects of us going to CMS or Congress to change this in the coming months?
So what has been proposed is, would take place January 1, 2022. We would, as Dr. Heron mentioned, we filed our comment earlier this week. We'll see the final rule, on or around November 1, as is typical. And so I think there are gradations of success here. We were able to generate a lot just earlier this week, generate a lot of interest from the House of Representatives, a letter led by Congressman Rush and Congressman Bilirakis, got 75 signatures on that letter, it was a letter to CMS raising concerns about the clinical labor policy. We had some ACRO physicians reaching out directly to their member of Congress, asking them to sign on to the letter. and some of them did. Some of those members of Congress did sign on to that letter, which is great. And the more pressure that we can bring to the table, but the more we can elevate this awareness. And I tell you, when this rule was proposed, whenever it was mid-July, and I started doing meetings and calls to the Hill, nobody knew about this issue. This was not on folks' radar. What was on folks' radar is the fact that there was this 3.75% cuts of the conversion factor in the physician fee schedule. That is actually a result of last year's rule. So last year's rule again was, from a congressional point of view, was so bad that they phased the cuts in, and so the next tranche of the cut comes January 1, 2022, as well. So folks were focused on that 3.75, but this clinical labor piece, nobody had a clue. And I'm happy to say that now, both chambers, both parties, many members, committees, all the committee staff, leadership, they're aware of this issue now. And so, I am cautiously optimistic that we'll see, some relief from the administration. We've been having numerous calls over there with, CMS, HHS, the White House. So they're very well aware of this issue. And, relief could be anywhere from them kind of making changes to how they apply this budget neutrality provision, or to, a phase in of the cuts. And I have to say that either one of those, while they would, while we should see them as success, and we should be happy with that, I think it's not enough. Given, and I think this is why Dr. Heron wanted to start the way he did with talking about the historical, radiation oncology has already been under serious pressure over the last many years. And, so a phase in, again, although would be a welcome relief and something we would applaud, we would also really want to stay on it with the Hill and with the administration. I think it's remarkable that, in addition to the Rush Bilirakis letter asking CMS not to implement the clinical labor policy, the other thing it does is it says, look, CMS, you have been receiving reports from the RAND Corporation for the last 3 years on fundamental reform of the physician fee schedule. So we Congress know that you CMS are concerned, have been concerned about what's going on with the physician fee schedule and ways to update it. Focus on that. And there's a separate letter going on the Hill right now, led by Congressman Barrett and Bouchon. This one is going to leadership, and it's on that 3.75% issue, which is now a congressional issue because Congress had to step in last year on those E&M cuts. But the other thing that's in that letter is very similar to what is in the Rush Bilirakis letter, which is the PFS needs fundamental reform. It is growing ever more out of out of whack with what is really required to provide these services, particularly in the office-based setting.
I think, Jason, this, if I may, Brian, extend Jason's comment here, because I think it's really important that, that Rush Bilirakis letter really is that I think we can take credit, that Jason's being a bit modest, but we can take credit for highlighting this and pushing this forward. And this is an example of some of the advocacy that this college, ACRO, is doing on your behalf. And I think it's really important that we get engagement and let you know, for instance, what we're doing on your behalf, and for you to get engaged in any way possible. And we can outline that, and we will in the future, a number of ways that you can get engaged. One of them, frankly, is through the ACRO PAC. But I think it's really important to recognize that we as a college need to stay on top of it. We need your support to help us continue down this path. So I just wanted to, say thank you, Jason, for highlighting this. This is really important. This is another example, one example of the many, many examples of the things that the GREC and the ACRO PAC and your college, American College of Radiation Oncology, is advocating on your behalf.
Thanks for that, Dwight. Is there anything specific we should be asking our members to do to help the GREC and our lobbying team in Washington?
Absolutely. Let me take a stab at this, and then I'll have Jason jump in as well. I think, as I just said, it's really important. Advocacy is important, but we also need your engagement, right? So we can do, there's so much that we can do, but your voice is even more powerful. So when we put out the call to action for you to reach out to your congressperson, whether it's a senator, a congressman, congresswoman, engage with us. This is really important. It really does make a difference, and all politics is local. So your local congressman wants to hear from you. If you can even host them in your practice and show them around, we can help coordinate those kinds of things. I think that is the first thing. The second thing is members of the GREC and the college are actually also talking to the administration about challenges and things that are perhaps impeding your ability to practice medicine and radiation oncology the way you would like. And so it's important that you talk to us, you engage with us, and let us know what's going on, because we can in fact advocate on your behalf. Jason?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's incredibly important topic. There are two significant lines of advocacy that ACRO members can undertake. One of which they call grassroots, and one of which is called grass tops. Grassroots it tends to be the kind of the more reactive stuff. So the physician portal that we set up earlier, Fraser, I think it was earlier this month, on the physician fee schedule. For anybody that did go to that portal and either urge their member of Congress to sign on to the Rush-Billeracus letter, or anybody that's written a letter to CMS. Those things are great. They're imperative. A bit to Dr. Heron's point about all politics being local. These folks need to hear from their member of Congress. And the thing is, that stuff is used. I use that stuff. I literally use that stuff over the last few weeks. Any member of Congress that got more than a handful of constituent letters, I went back into the database and I sent those to the Health LA and said, hey, you guys got several constituent letters here. You might want to sign on to the Rush-Billeracus letter. And I'm happy to, talk to you about this issue in more detail. So that's grassroots, incredibly important, but again, kind of reactive. The grass tops is something where, it's also essential. And it involves more of the kind of relationship with directly with the member of Congress. A lot of times that is through, showing financial support. And so, we do have a PAC, as Dr. Heron mentioned, and contributing, just a little bit to that PAC, becoming a regular contributing member is very helpful. And in addition to that, for anybody that really wants to get involved, all right, as a physician leader with this college, to actually be part of an event with any given member of Congress. So we had an event with Senator Stabenow earlier this year, and to literally be a part of that process, talking to the senator, talking to some representative. That is also something that is meaningful, and that is these are events, and so there's a financial contribution there as well. But all these things are really important to on the grassroots side, again, to show local support. On the grass top side, to say, look, thank you for what you do. We support you, and here's you're doing right by us, and we support you in your role there. And so these are all incredibly helpful things, and are almost, I'd say, sine qua non to in terms of what I do in terms of ultimately being successful on the Hill.
Thanks, Jason. I think this has been terrific today. And I just want to thank both of you for being here. And I appreciate all the information you have given us. I have found it to be very educational. I think we're going to wrap it up here, but I also wanted to make sure I say thanks to our production team for making this new podcasting platform available to our membership. And I'm looking forward to many more podcasts in the future. Everyone, stay safe out there. And I hope to see you at the annual meeting in March of 2022 in Fort Lauderdale. Have a good day.